Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar Podcast. I'm very excited for today's episode. We've got founder Mark Aylward. What he does is he helps successful men rebuild confidence after hardship. Actually, better yet, he helps capable men rebuild confidence after hardship. I'm very excited to be rocking out today with Mark. Hey, Mark, are you ready to rock?
I am, Tim. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So we always start off here in a good note. So tell me a story of success that we can be inspired by.
Yeah, so I built and sold two successful IT staffing companies. The first one was with my mentor. He basically invested in me and taught me everything about starting a contract recruiting firm. And then I went off and did it on my own with a buddy of mine years later. So I think all of the topics that you talk about are very interesting to me because I spent my entire life helping people progress professionally, mostly in the forms of getting them better jobs or promotions and negotiate on their behalf. But the I remember my first placement was a single father with three young boys who was about to lose his house.
Mm.
And that's the first time I ever heard, Mark, you saved my life.
Wow.
And I'll never forget that. I remember thinking that day, this is what God wants me to do. So I should start to figure this out. And there's all kinds of other stories around that one, but that when you said what you said, that's the one that popped into my head.
Wow. Well, and now, unfortunately, sometimes the good notes have to come along with the bad notes too. Sort of
Hmm.
the things that don't go as planned.
Hmm.
And I do like to talk about both of those things because, yes,
Sure.
I mean, we all have great success stories, but also a lot of things that keep people out of making changes in their life is the fear of failure. And I want to make sure that people understand that we all have the bad notes from time to time, and you can recover from those. So, can you share one that we can learn from?
Yeah, I think even though I have a litany of interesting stories around a very contentious divorce, and my children and I are all happy and healthy now and very loving relationships, so we came out of that storm. The one that strikes me as most relevant perhaps to your audience is, when I sold my second company, it was under duress, and that's related to the divorce. One of the things that we did not do, and I would advise this of anybody contemplating building a company or selling a company, is we did a great job on the due diligence with regard to the financials. We were great with the numbers. What we didn't do is investigate the culture and the culture of where you're going to work, because I went to work for these people for a 2-year contract post sale. What we discovered about the culture is we weren't a good fit for the culture at all.
Hmm.
And I regret not investigating that. It did impact my earnout. It impacted my satisfaction, my happiness. It was a rough couple of years. And but but who knew? I mean, when you've never done something before, you're usually going to miss something. And investigating the financials is great, but you also do need to investigate the culture because companies buy other companies for reasons. They might want geographic locations. They might want to expand in a particular direction from an industry standpoint. There's a purpose behind the purchase. And without understanding the purpose behind the purchase, if you will,
Mhm.
you're probably going to get it wrong. And we did. So that's a big one. There are many others. So
Hmm.
you want to talk mistakes, we could stay here for a while, Tim.
Well, the idea of culture does keep coming up quite often and more now than it did 10 years ago when I started the
Hmm.
podcast. And, it is interesting because people do think about the numbers. I mean, not everybody, but but you tend to think about the numbers. Okay, is this a profitable company? Is this something that I'm going to buy? And even when it comes to hiring, when it comes to finding top talent, people will focus on the talent instead of the culture. Like there's so many like areas of your business that you think of the obvious thing, but you don't think of the culture as much. And now that's becoming more and more important because I think a lot of people are gravitating towards culture, and there's so many different types of companies that you can be interested in. I'm wondering, like, is that something that comes up in other areas of the business too, is culture?
Yeah, I spend a vast amount of my time on LinkedIn. It's my source of marketing and leads, and I create a lot of content. I build my authority there. I build my credibility there. And there's a lot of talk on LinkedIn about work. I mean,
Mm.
that's what the platform started for. It's become other things as well. But the big thing about culture is I've gone into hundreds of companies over the course of about 30 years, maybe thousands, from small companies to Fortune 100 companies. And when you look at a company through the lens of how they hire people, my contention is that how companies hire people is how they do everything.
Mm.
And it's hiring, it's onboarding, it's training and development. And I see an almost absence of consistent culture because I don't think, to your point, I don't think people pay attention to it. I think people kind of expect it to occur,
Mm.
or it's going to trickle down from the top because whoever the CEO is, or the founder, or the owner, whoever he or she might be, is what the culture is going to look like. I think that's a false assumption. I think culture needs attention. And what I see on LinkedIn is one of two things: people complaining about their culture and not doing anything about it,
Yeah.
or people not talking about it for fear that they'll be punished for talking about it.
Hmm.
And I never understood that, probably because I'm an entrepreneur. I say whatever I want, and that's usually helpful for everyone, but not always.
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation with my first boss when he was yelling at me in front of people, and I pulled him into his office and I said, "Look, I love this work. I love this job. I appreciate you signing my paycheck. I'm very grateful. But if you ever yell at me in front of other people, particularly people that you want me to supervise, I'm walking out that door and you'll never see me again." It completely changed our relationship for the better. And I've told him recently, because we still talk, I don't, were you doing that on purpose, or you just being a dick? And and he doesn't even remember the incident. It was probably 25 years ago. But that was my first taste of, am I going to do anything about this, or am I going to let myself be treated poorly? And that's a cultural thing for me. It comes up as toxicity on the LinkedIn platform, and I just think I don't think anyone pays enough attention to it. I don't think most companies do it well. I think it's often just a sign on the wall that you walk by every once in a while and you're reminded of this vision or this mission, but it doesn't translate into the day-to-day environment. And I think it's a really missed opportunity for most companies.
So, do you have any suggestions on how, if you were just starting a new business or if you were trying to overhaul your current business, just some tips on how they can create that culture like intentionally?
Well, I think it comes down to values. I think this is when I coach people individually, I talk a lot about alignment. And then
Hmm.
what I mean by alignment is, are you doing and saying things that are in alignment with what you truly believe in? And Tim, I find most people never have that discussion with themselves. We just make assumptions about what our values are. Like, everybody wants to be known as honest. Everyone wants to be known as kind. Everyone wants to be known. But I think about things like clarity and being concise and
Yeah.
being consistent and being personally accountable. And those are all admirable traits, but left unsaid, left, alone, they don't just happen, right?
No.
So I think that if I were to advise someone, which I do advise people when they're contemplating starting companies, because that's kind of in my wheelhouse, that's the first thing I do with everybody, whether they're starting a company or just looking to improve their personal circumstances, is let's talk about what's important to you, and let's get that on the table. And I'm not here to agree or disagree with what your values are. That's not my judgment to make. But I do think it's helpful and it's critical that if you start writing content, if you start speaking out loud, if you start visiting clients and making phone calls, what comes out of your mouth should start with, this is what we believe in. This is who we are. And I think it's that simple. I think it's just give it attention, make it an exercise, and then understand, like any exercise, like sit-ups, you got to do them every day. You can't
Yeah.
just do 100 of them one day and expect you're going to have six packs abs. That's not the way stuff works.
Yeah.
So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. I mean, really, when we choose our friends, when we choose our relationships, I mean, all those are hopefully considering values first, right? And picking people that will fit that. So why not your companies, right? I think people just assume that they got to fill a spot with the best, technical talent of that area, but they don't necessarily think of, how is that person aligning with what I believe? And if you believe the same things, you don't have to convince anybody of that, right?
Yeah, it really is a heavy ball. This idea of hiring people, which is my, if I have an area of expertise, that's certainly one of them, just from
Hmm.
the amount of years I've done it, is this idea that I never hired anybody because of their experience, not once. And
Wow.
because I didn't care what their experience was, I wanted them to be honest. I wanted them to be hardworking. I wanted them to be personally accountable. And my favorite question in the interview process, Tim, and sometimes it was the only question I asked, was tell me about the hardest thing that's ever happened to you in your life and how you came out the other side.
Wow.
And I get storytelling, I get creativity, I get imagination, I get personal accountability. I get everything I need or I don't with that answer. And I think, and you're a software guy or an IT guy. I don't know if I assume programming is part of that skill set.
Hmm.
So, the garbage in, garbage out thing is something you're aware of. But I think the other thing about hiring is people hate to do it. It's the process itself is so cumbersome. It's so burdensome. It takes so much time. And I've never met a CIO that liked hiring, not once. So I think what people do is they get into the hiring process and then they settle because they get sick of it. And I think that's way more common than most people understand.
Yeah. And then what's even more fun is firing.
Oh man, it's the worst. I've never done it without allowing people to keep their dignity. I was
Mhm.
always very sensitive to that. But also, Tim, even though it's the hardest thing to do as a business owner, in my estimation, it was also always the best thing to do for both parties. And I used
Yeah.
to tell people, look, the way that I do this recruiting thing is my way. You don't fit into my way. And it took us a few months to figure that out, and that's okay. So you'll be better off finding a way that suits you, because my way is not the only way. And we'll be better off because we will have one less frustrated person, working here every day. So let's just agree to part ways respectfully. And that always went pretty well. It just getting ready for it was always the hardest part. The actual doing it wasn't always that hard. A couple of times it was.
Agreed. So I've got a lot of analogies in this podcast, and one of them we talk about is practice. So I mean, in music, it's obvious. You do need to practice before you go do your big show. In business, I'm not sure if it's as obvious. Do you have practices that you do to make sure that you're up on, the latest in your
I
business?
I do. And it's a great topic. I was resistant to goal setting. I always have been. I always felt pressure from goal setting. And I worked for people that set goals for me, set goals with me. But when I started working for myself, and even more recently, I'm a huge proponent of process. And if the process works, if it's something you can do relatively quickly, something you can look forward to doing consistently every day, something that it has a simplicity to it that doesn't make it burdensome, and it supports whatever your goal is. And for most of us that run our own companies, that one of those goals is revenue, right? And you could take revenue, you could take profit, six of one, half dozen of the other.
Mm.
Profit's more accurate, but they're both aspirational goals, right? One comes with the other, usually.
Mm.
So I get first thing in the morning, I get up and I have a prayer ceremony. I'm a Catholic and I went to Notre Dame, and they send me an email every morning about whatever gospel's being read at mass that day. And I read that with my girlfriend in person or on FaceTime. That starts me off. That's really cool. And it's simple. Then we do some breath work, Wim Hof breathing, if you know who Wim Hof is. And if you don't, you should look him up when we're done.
Mm.
And that's a 15-minute exercise that vibrates. I get my face in the sun. I drink some water, and I open up my journal. And my journaling is the point of your question, and that's where all of my processes and systems sit. And I could go into detail on that at another point in time because it's fairly detailed, but it's very simple. The exercise of filling out that page in my journal takes me about 10 minutes. And so by the time the sun rises, I'm ready to go, and I think all of that sits well into your concept of the musician that, you got to play those chords over and over and over and over again.
Hmm.
So my repetitive tasks are pretty obvious. They'd be creating content, commenting on posts, writing posts, doing videos, guesting on podcasts, anything to get the word out there to people about who I am and what I do. And then what comes back is people with whom that resonates usually engage me in some capacity. So
Wow.
that's an oversimplification, but that's the way that works.
Well, okay, so for me, with journaling, we'll take that as an example. I've been an off and on journaler for 20 years.
Hmm.
I'll be very, very good at it for a while and then just sort of forget about it. I don't even understand how that happens. And then I'll be on a podcast or something like that, and someone will mention journaling. Oh yeah, geez, I haven't done that in a while, and I'll get back to it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how do you stay consistent? How are you, or are you also off and on?
I was for a long time. And then I bumped into a guy that had a structure that resonated with me. It had a spiritual bent to it, which resonated with me. Um, it was funny. I was wrestling with myself a couple of years ago with the difference between prayer and meditation. And I had this little kind of pagan versus Catholic argument with myself. Like, if you're meditating, are you doing a disservice to God? Or like, it was
Yeah.
really interesting. I was really struggling with the conversation. So I just got rid of the meditation and stayed with the prayer. That was part of it. And so that makes me feel an obligation because God's involved. I gotta show up for God this morning. So
Okay,
that
yeah.
might be a large part of it. But sometimes we're just ready for things that we weren't ready for 2 years ago or 5 years ago. Sometimes things resonate because someone says them to you differently. And one of my favorite phrases is, we need to be reminded far more often than we need to be educated, you
Mm,
know? So most of the stuff that you tell me, I will have heard already, and most of the stuff I tell you, you will have heard already.
yep. Yep. I agree. So a structure is
Yeah.
useful, and I agree. I think that the times that I've been very good at my journaling has been when maybe I'll get like a book that has a journal component to it,
Hmm.
and you've got this structure that you can follow. Because I mean, journaling, what do you write? Like, unless there's something, some sort of steps that you can follow, it's just I don't even know what to do, right?
Yeah, well, there's a school of thought that says just brain dump, just
Yeah.
free flow, right? I mean, I think getting things out of your system is cathartic no matter what it looks like, right? So I would say to people that are contemplating this or struggling with it, as you've suggested, because I did too,
Mhm.
structure for sure is one of the solutions. If you're a God person, being obligated to God for something is pretty powerful. If you're not, of course, it doesn't make any difference. But the structure of mine is, there are things that I write, and then there are boxes that I check. Like, did you pray today? Boom, check.
Yeah.
What's your flow anchor today? Gratitude. Okay, check. And then I don't know if you know Andrew Huberman, the psychologist, therapist, celebrity. He talks about psychological things all the time. He's a very bright guy, interesting fellow. I heard him not long ago say, people do I am statements. I am, I'm struggling with self-doubt. I'm struggling with imposter syndrome. If you flip that, instead of saying I am, say you are, you then become a third party advocate of you. So it's not
Wow.
you telling yourself anything anymore. This expert is telling you this. And it's incredibly interesting. I see you nodding your head. When I
Hmm.
said that to my daughter the first time months ago, she goes, Dad, that makes perfect sense. I go, yeah, it's pretty crazy, you know? So something to consider trying, if you want to get back into some journaling and some structure. So I make a list of things, and instead of being self-doubt, I am confident, right?
Wow.
Instead of being, prideful, I'm humble. They're easy to flip, right? But the notion of saying, and so that's a list. There's two or three lists. And then another thing is, I pick 5 areas of my life that I just throw a little love and gratitude at, and could just be a 5-second thought. It could be a prayer. It could be a phone call. But these 5 things require my love and attention every day. And before I did that, like my children, God, my girlfriend, my business, my health, before I did that, I would, like most people probably, I would go all in on one of them and neglect the other 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And that's just human nature. So this reminder to give all 5 of these areas a little bit of love, it's pretty powerful. So
Yeah.
that, again, back to the structure of my journal.
Wow. Now, another thing that I found is good for accountability is being accountable to another person, right? Like
Hmm.
either finding like a mastermind or a coach or some sort of accountability partner. Because like you say, I mean, trying to be accountable to yourself, I mean, you let yourself down all the time. But
Yeah.
but as soon as you put something else, like either God or maybe another person into the mix, now it's like, oh, I'm gonna go meet with so and so. I better do what I said I was gonna do before I
No,
go meet
it's
with them.
yeah, it's a very powerful point. It's really I just wrote something about accountability and human nature being we don't like to be held accountable.
Hmm.
None of us do. And
No.
but even the ones of us that don't like to be held accountable know that we need to be held accountable.
Yeah.
And I I I don't practice the accountability buddy. I just that phrase just turns me off. Maybe I should just call it something else.
Yeah.
But I do have a few guys, and my children and my girlfriend and my dad and my older brother in particular, who don't let me get away with things. And I don't think I try to get away with things. I learned a long time ago that the light shines on all of us eventually. You know, you can hide whatever you try, whatever you want to try and hide, but people are gonna figure it out eventually. But I think you're right. I think, if you're going to the gym in the morning not to meet anybody, you're going to miss some days. But if you got to meet somebody there at 7 o'clock, you're going to probably be a lot more likely to get there because you don't want to let them down. So I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. And what about other types of coaches? Like, are you a type of person that hires coaches in the past or even in the current?
I just terminated a relationship with a coach, and it wasn't for anything bad. It was just I felt like I've reached the end of what this person can offer me. And I started to hear some redundancy in the
Hmm.
messaging. And I'm like, this is just a decision I need to make. And yeah, I think that hiring, because I'm a coach, right? And I think that, the classic example everyone wants to talk about is just Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan, or,
Right.
they all have coaches. They all have multiple coaches for exactly what we're talking about, to be held accountable, to help you get out of your own way.
Yeah.
We often cannot see what's wrong with us. There's biblical verses about that all over the place. The we can see the splinter in someone else's eye, but we can't see the log in our own eye. That's a parable. I think coaches are great. I think the most important part of a coach is that he or she has to resonate with you.
Yeah.
I don't think the messaging is as nearly as important as the resonance, which would involve integrity and values and consistency and accountability. And I have this phrase that keeps coming up that I started using that I'm going to keep using because I like it. It's called kind candor. And kindness to me is telling people what they need to hear, not
Yeah.
what they want to hear.
Yeah.
That's being nice. And I think being nice is basically kissing someone's ass. I don't think it's productive at all.
No.
And candor is required because I'm not going to gloss over something because I'm concerned about how it might make you feel. But if I'm trying to be kind while I'm being candid, then it probably will be accepted. It probably will be heard. It probably will resonate. But candor without kindness is ineffective. It's old school. And kindness without candor is a waste of time. So that's those are my thoughts about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, if the person on the other end of it doesn't take your kind candor well, then they're not in a place where they're ready to grow anyway.
That's right.
And there's really
That's right.
nothing you could have done to help them at that particular
You know,
moment.
yeah, it's so true. And I think, I've had family and friend experience with things like addiction and alcoholism, and it's almost unlikely that any of us don't have some
Mm,
connection to that.
Yeah.
And if you have, you'll know, and I'm in it right now with one of my brothers, to be transparent, and he's not ready for help.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter how logical I am. It doesn't matter the damage that's being done. It doesn't matter until someone is ready to be helped. It's very difficult to help them. So I don't push myself on people for exactly that reason. I want people to come to me. I want people to say, I read your thing over here and it was interesting to me. Can we talk a little further?
Yeah.
So I don't chase people down for exactly that reason.
Yeah. Well, and to flip that around too, like I have noticed that if I react poorly to something that someone else says, like to that, kind candor, I find that that's like it's like a marker for me. I kind of go, okay, why am I getting upset right now?
Yep. Yep.
Because there's something probably in our psyche that's just blocking us, just like it is with the people in our lives that we're trying to help,
No
that
question.
they don't necessarily know that they're getting triggered for whatever it is. But
I
I do
think it's
find
a
that those triggers are illuminating.
Yes, I agree. I think that's a great level of self-awareness, and which is a great quality to have. I pride myself in being self-aware. I don't think you can be too self-aware, but
Mm.
maybe you can. I think that, like yesterday, something happened that made me angry, and I don't like to be angry. I
No.
very rarely am angry. And to your point, I stopped myself and I thought I was about to say something to someone else I was talking to, and it was layered in this anger that had nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
And I paused, which is another thing that I teach people to do. When emotion comes, you don't respond, you pause
Yeah.
and regain objectivity to the extent that you can. It's my dad taught me that as a fighter pilot. What's the first thing you do when an engine catches on fire? He says nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Because if you react out of fear, chances are people will die.
Yeah.
And if you stop yourself and regain your objectivity, all that training that's in your head will come back to you and you'll know what to do. And that's a powerful lesson that I share with everybody.
Wow. Yeah. No, I agree. So, okay, I'm excited to talk about your business. So tell me what's exciting in your business right now.
So as we kind of alluded to in our pregame discussion, I had to make a choice because on one hand, what I do, helping people improve professionally as well as personally, because I can't do one without the other,
Mm.
and I think they're closely tied. I can help everybody. I've had so many conversations with people who would not want to have a discussion with someone who is an expert in getting better work, right?
Mm.
Almost everyone is open to that discussion. Well, you can't market to everyone. You can't message everyone, or you'll help no one,
Yeah.
right? And that's a classic marketing mistake that people make. This thing's good for everybody. Well, that doesn't matter. So I had to pick. And over the last couple of years, I thought, I'm investigating this notion of how confused we are about what a man is today. And that's
Mm.
not a political statement, that's just an
No.
observation. And there's all kinds of historical data to support this. If you're familiar with the Harvard study of men that goes back to the 1930s, they got 85, 90 years of data. They just interviewed men about happiness. And over the course of 80 to 100 years, they went from just white men to all kinds of different colored men to their children to their wives to some of them are grandparents, some of them have passed away. So it's a really robust set of data. And it really intrigued me that men were struggling so much. And then I thought, well, I have some of this experience. I have had some hardship. I've had some adversity. I lost everything
Hmm.
and I've been able to recover from that. What a wonderful thing to be able to help someone else do. And to your point about how many female coaches there are out there and how few male coaches there are out there, I remember walking around in the courthouse because I was in that courthouse for 10 years off and on, like all the time. And people are wandering around and they're scared and they're anxious and they're depressed and they're frightened and they're unclear about like where is this room 305 where I have to go in and lose my house and my children. And I just thought to myself, there's a lot of people that need help. So I'm just going to grab this sliver of middle-aged men because that's when life, you're running in your 20s, you're running in your 30s, you're starting a family, maybe you're having kids, you're just running, right? And then at some point, probably around 40, but there's not a number, it's just a guess. All of a sudden, life slows down a little and you get to look around. And not all of us like what we see when we look around. And we recognize I haven't had time to even breathe until now. And I don't like the way that looks. So what do I do about that? Well, talk to Mark, So again, an oversimplification, but it's so serving other people like that and having people say things to you like, you saved me. I feel completely different now. I'm optimistic again. I'm hopeful again. I have a plan of action that you've helped me define, and I'm going to start taking these steps, and I'm going to come back to you to get refreshed periodically. And that's really worked out well. That's really become, my messaging is there, my coaching is there, my content is there. Everything is kind of lined up nicely. And I feel again like this is kind of what God wants me to do.
Well, why do you think it is that there are so many female coaches, but not as many male coaches?
It's a great question. These are just opinions.
Yes, of course.
So not facts, but I've got two daughters. Both of them are entrepreneurs. Both of them are successful. They're beautiful. They're intelligent. They're hardworking. They're feminine and they're tough. And women are more open to being coached. Women are more open to talking about things that are bothering them.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be one of the reasons.
I agree.
Guys, on the other hand, in my experience, if I had conversations with some of my friends that I grew up with that in a really intimate fashion, they would start to tease me. They would start to make fun of me. They would call me names that I can't repeat here on your podcast. And that's all fun and good. But I think it's those two reasons. I think that men are not willing, at least by perception, to be coached about intimate things. And that's the only way to get past hardship, is to talk about tough things.
Yeah.
And women are more open to it. But I also think that the culture that we live in is yelling at the world, you need to help the women more. The men are fine, right?
Yes.
And the men are not fine. That's a misinterpretation. But I think it's something that's kind of lasted even after it stopped being fine.
Yeah.
And we just haven't adjusted yet. I'm writing a book right now, Tim, and I'm in the middle of this historical transition from my dad knew exactly who he was. He was a fighter pilot. He was an airline pilot. He was a father. He was a provider. He was a protector. There was never any question about that, right? When I started to grow up, that's when things started. Feminism arrived in the 70s, maybe even arguably the 60s. And a lot of that was good. We needed a lot of those things. Women deserved a lot of the stuff that came with that. But what we didn't do is we didn't replace the old masculinity definition with a new one. We just said, don't do that. We didn't say, do this instead. So that just leaves men confused, and I see examples of that everywhere. So that's a long-winded answer to why I think there are more female coaches than there are male coaches. And then when I went to study my competition, there isn't any,
I know.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, the other side of it is that there are probably less men willing to even take on that role in the first place, let alone the men that want to take it.
Yeah, I certainly didn't see that path coming. It came for me. It didn't come because I was trying to attract. I mean, who wants to attract hardship, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think men are sort of like supposed to be strong and have it all together, and they're supposed to be the leaders of the households and all that stuff from what we've been taught. But like you say, things have changed. And now a lot of those things were like, I remember just being even confused if I'm supposed to hold a door open for a woman or not.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
just like just the basics of it, of going like, I think I should. Isn't that nice? Like, aren't I being a good person by holding a door open? Why am I getting yelled at right now? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, it's so funny that I've used that analogy many times because I open the door for everybody.
So do I.
And I say hi to everybody. As a matter of fact, I was pulling into the grocery last night and I was coming around from this angle and there was an open parking spot there and there was someone in front of me that was coming this way. and she was there before me,
Hmm.
but I had the space to just slide into that spot and essentially flip her the bird. And I just chuckled, and I went straight past her and pulled into the left and gave her that position. And we both got out of the cars at the same time, and she just said, "Thank you so much for doing that. You're a good person." And I said, "That would have been a dick move." And
Yeah.
we both got a laugh out of it. It was really funny.
Yeah.
I think strong women are really comfortable with masculine men. I think
Yes.
it's insecure women that aren't, and I don't suffer insecurity. I'm not judgmental about it, but I'm like, if what I say or do in kindness and good intention is offensive to you, that's not my problem. That's your problem. And I'm not taking that on as my problem. Whether you want me to or not, I'm sorry, not doing that. So
Uh-huh.
that's a very interesting place to be because, as you seem to understand, it's why are we confused about these things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, it seems, but I mean, hey, who knows? However, I hope that now men are going to be more open to accepting that help. And I think maybe can kind of like even flipping back to what we talked about earlier about the kind candor, right? You
Mhm.
know, if you're feeling like triggered regularly by things and angry and upset and sad and all that stuff, well, then maybe that's the time to kind of look inside and go, okay, maybe I need a little bit of help with this because I don't know how to fix it right now, right?
Yeah, well, there's a humility to that that's challenging for people to call upon. I think it certainly was for me. I mean, a couple of things that happened to me after my contentious divorce and being a single dad was I just became a much better listener,
Mm,
and that's a good thing. I told you a little bit about the fact that my daughters, I went through everything that a mother's supposed to go through as a father, and I've had a couple people tell me, I think your experience as a single father of two girls has shaped you in a fashion that makes you somewhat unique. And I
yeah.
keep getting reminded of that. And I think the other interesting and kind of funny part is you can't tell this on the podcast, but I'm 6'4", 225 pounds. I'm not a small man,
Wow.
and I can be very loud. And so people assume I'm masculine, and I believe that I am.
Yeah.
But when I come at them with the soft side, I see a lot of surprises. Like I've had people tell me before, I didn't expect that at all. And I'm like, good. That's good.
Good. All right. So then how do we find out more then?
Yeah, I mean, markaylward.com, and it's Mark with a K, and Aylward is Aylward. And everything that I do can be accessed from there. I would also suggest looking me up on LinkedIn, and my name, Aylward Mark, is my. I think if you type in Mark Aylward, I show up. My LinkedIn profile shows up as the number one choice because it's an obscure English name that doesn't really have much presence here in the States. It's a
Mhm.
Newfoundland, Ireland, England trail, Nova Scotia. And so, yeah, and I think the first step for anybody that is intrigued by anything I've said would be just click the button that's on that front page. There's like three or four of them as you scroll down. It just says schedule a conversation. And it's a 30-minute call. I do it for free. And I basically just get to where I can tell you at the end of that how I can help you, if I can help you. And I'll also, if you choose not to access my help at that, I'll give you a couple things that you can take action on that will move you forward free of charge. So
Mhm.
it's a kindness gesture, but it's also, there's a sales component to it. I just don't get salesy on the call because, as I told you earlier, I'm not interested in convincing anybody about anything. I'm interested in people saying that resonates with me. I want to hear more.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't help anybody who's not ready anyway, right? So
No, no,
right on.
no, you can't.
One more question, might be the hardest one. Who's your favorite rock star?
That's easy for me. He passed a couple years ago, but Tom Petty.
Mm.
I went to a Tom Petty concert when I was 15 years old at the Cape Cod Coliseum, which doesn't exist anymore, and he was the backup band for a band called the Jay Giles Band, which is if you're not from the Northeast, you might not know them, but they had their fame for a while, and they were a big deal. And then this band, the blue stage lit up, and all of a sudden, this song called "I Need to Know" started getting played, and I'm like, man. And I saw him three or four times, and he's always the best live show I've ever been to. And My daughters are fans of his now. We've got all kinds of literature around the house, books about him. And yeah, that was an easy question for me.
Awesome. You don't get many that know it exactly. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Oh, Tom Petty is amazing. I've got so many, I know so many of his songs that I do in my cover work, and it always gets a great reaction from everybody. Like men, women, everybody loves Tom Petty.
Have you seen, I think it's called Wildflower, the
I have.
documentary?
I have. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, it's a fantastic film. Rick Rubin's in it, as I
He
recall. It's
is.
really interesting. I just found him to be a really interesting guy the whole time. He was a great musician. I mean, he's the one who said, these tickets are too expensive. Don't raise your prices. I want my fans to be able to see me.
Yeah.
He had a very challenging life as well, personally. But yeah, that was an easy question for me, Tim.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for rocking out with me today. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too. I've had a great time, and maybe we can do it again sometime.
Great. Yes, awesome. To the listeners, make sure you go to workathomerockstar.com for more information, and we'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.